crispy chicken strips tossed in spicy Nashville hot sauce. Max Power producing and manning that IHOP hotline for us. Glad to have Max in this week. Hope Jad enjoys his time off. Happy birthday, Jad. But that is the number, 869-1240, to get in some reactions. We'll have KU insider Shreyas Laddha joining us at the top of the hour to talk about a big KU football win. What did he see from late night at the Fog from the men's basketball program? We'll get into all of that with Shreyas in the second hour. Get through the entire football weekend, including K-State as well, with a really disappointing loss on Friday. And, of course, around the NFL, including the Chiefs, who were in action. And, oh, by the way, we've got a men's basketball AAC poll out. Where do the Shockers sit? We'll get into all of that as we make our way through this Monday. Tommy, how are you?
I'm good. It's a busy Monday. I probably watched more football this weekend than I have maybe all season long. Had a chance to just watch all the college games on Saturday. Basically watched football all day yesterday too. So feeling good about it, ready to get in here today and react on a Monday.
Yeah, it was a very busy football weekend for sure. It was a busy baseball weekend. Yeah. I'm trying to like dig out all my old Rangers shirts, and it reminds me that like everything that I boast for my Rangers is really old. This shirt right now that really, if you're watching on our video stream, which is available on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch, commemorates when Rougned Odor, knocked out Jose Bautista out there at second. That happened 7 years ago, Tommy. That's how long it's been since the Rangers have been in the playoffs. So they're up 2-0. Your Braves in action tonight. A little stumble there in game one.
Yep.
I know the Phillies are hot. I get it. I get the I get being as nervous as you probably are about that game. That's tonight. I got a lot of like fantasy football implications riding on tonight's Monday Night Football game, Packers-Raiders, which is interesting. But let's talk about the Chiefs first here, Tommy. Play an afternoon game against Minnesota. We figured it would be close. It was. Minnesota made the mistakes that they continue to consistently make, and it allowed the Chiefs to sort of cruise in. I never saw a shootout in this game. Now, it was close, and, you wonder what would have happened if you didn't have the turnovers. But, I thought a couple of things. I thought the Chiefs were going to try to run the ball. They did try to run the ball. They weren't very effective running the ball. They got enough going through the passing game. Thankfully, Travis Kelce bounced right back from a low ankle sprain and was able to even be a factor, I think, there late in the second half. So I assume that he'll be fine. We'll get an update today from Andy Reid, but that was a good win for the Chiefs. I thought it was a dangerous game. It's back-to-back road weeks. Minnesota's desperate, all of those things, and they were able to go ahead and get the win. I thought that the defense was pretty impressive, quite frankly. Anytime you slow down Justin Jefferson, like the Chiefs were very clearly very clearly willing to give up anything else except for Justin Jefferson. It was good game plan, and it worked. So they executed defensively, and it was enough to get a tough road win. I was very pleased with the Chiefs yesterday.
Yeah, you do what you can to get the victory on the road, and you get back home. I mean, it's basically as simple as that. Justin Jefferson did go down with a hamstring injury, but before that, I thought the Chiefs secondary did a pretty solid job of limiting him. Jefferson had like 28 yards receiving. They kept him out of the end zone. I thought Trent McDuffie played really well on Jefferson. L'Jarius Sneed did a good job too. Because you can't really play Justin Jefferson one-on-one. He's going to burn you every single time. He's that, talented of a receiver. And that was a big fear coming into this game, was how are the Chiefs planning on defending Justin Jefferson? And then are they going to throw a lot of pressure at Kirk Cousins? And they did. I thought Spags did a really good job of timing those blitz when he wanted to send pressure, when he wanted to drop back into coverage. And the one thing I noticed too was that, the Vikings offensive line, and we know they're not very good, but they did everything possible to limit Chris Jones. They doubled him at every step, every play. Basically, they doubled him. And then the one time they didn't, he was able to get to Kirk Cousins for a sack. So that just shows like how, dominant the interior is on the line for Kansas City with Chris Jones right there. But I thought the secondary did a really good job in coverage. Of course, you're going to see other guys be able to get theirs, like Jordan Addison had a pretty solid game. Alexander Mattison out of the backfield caught some passes. Cam Akers did the same thing. Hawkinson had an okay game. So the Vikings have so many different weapons that, even though if you limit Justin Jefferson, there are going to be other players that are going to be able to get theirs, and that's what happened. I thought offensively for Kansas City, of course, the Travis Kelce injury was frightening when it happened, and you didn't know what was going to ultimately happen. Would he be able to come back? He was able to. That was, clearly the most important thing, the most important development in the second half. But I also thought that Justin Watson had a great game. He had a couple of really big catches for Kansas City that, really kept drives alive for the Chiefs. And, I'm sitting there watching the game yesterday, and it was that one catch that Watson made where he elevated and went up and caught that pass. And my first thought was, I don't know why we give him, and when I say we, I mean collectively the fan base, why we give Justin Watson so much grief and, talk about like, well, is he really going to be this important receiver? He is what he is. No, he clearly is an important receiver for Patrick Mahomes because he trusts him and Watson can come up and make the big play. So, I thought that was all really good. And, like I mentioned before, when you're on the road, at a place like Minnesota, you go in there, you get the victory however you can, you get out of there and you get back home.
Well, all of it. You got to consider all of it, right? It was back-to-back road trips. You're facing a desperate team. You're facing a dangerous quarterback. And then within the game, you're facing a situation where you lose your, again, outside of Patrick Mahomes, your most important player, I think pretty clearly now for the Chiefs within the game. Now he was able to come back, of course, but they were sustaining even without him. And look, they got a big time win. Like that, I know Minnesota's 1-4. I'm going to continue to say, like, even if Minnesota doesn't get things turned around, wins and losses, if Kirk Cousins is their quarterback and if Justin Jefferson's there, that's a team that can beat any team in football on any given Sunday, right? Like, we're not talking about the 1-4 Panthers here, who are not going to have a shot to beat every team in football. The Vikings absolutely have a shot to beat any team in football if they don't turn it over. What a lot of what ifs, but the talent is there for them to do that. So that's a dangerous game, and like everything about that was dangerous for Kansas City. And it came down to the end. Minnesota took a shot into the end zone to end the game, or they wanted to anyway. They didn't get the ball off, but it was a tight game all the way through. And I'm going to give this year, from what we've seen in the NFL, like outside of San Francisco, nobody is looking dominant right now. Like, that is the only team in football that is consistently looking dominant. San Francisco. That's it. Philadelphia is getting it done, but they're not looking dominant. Buffalo just lost to Jacksonville, which was on the table, right? I don't remember which game I picked, but I don't remember which way I picked that game. I think I picked Jacksonville, but I can't remember. You could see it coming, right? And Buffalo, outside of San Francisco, I think at the time, had looked like the other team that was sort of finding a groove. So this does feel like a year where you just take what you can get and hope that you're playing your best football at the end of the year. Outside of San Francisco, who clearly looks like the top team in football right now. I mean, it's not close, quite frankly, complete, all of those things. But we're saying that on October. If you're the Chiefs, like, who cares about October? Just win those games and let's care about January. So it was great. It was a good win. I thought the defense, honestly, after what we saw against the Jets, which sort of had everybody like, oh, hang on a minute here, rebounded nicely. And now you feel good about, now you feel better at least about the defense, because that's a big time test for them. If Zach Wilson can throw it around on you, what's Kirk Cousins going to do? And they did. Minnesota, it wasn't like Minnesota laid an egg. They were pretty effective throwing the ball. The Chiefs just had a clearly defined game plan, and they executed it well. They had big sacks when they needed them. They made a couple opportunistic plays with turnovers, and they limited Justin Jefferson. That's what any team's going to try to do against Minnesota, and the Chiefs got it done.
Kirk Cousins almost threw for 300 yards. He was 16 yards away from a 300-yard outing, so I thought Cousins, when he had the appropriate amount of time to get the ball out, I thought he looked pretty good. And that's really been the way that this Vikings team has operated, not only this season, but last season as well. I'll tell you one thing that concerns me slightly as we move forward and as we're through the first 5 games of the season for Kansas City. Patrick Mahomes is not throwing the ball downfield at a clip like we're used to seeing him do that. No. And I don't know really what it comes down to. I think it might be a combination of a couple things. I think number one, I don't know if he is I mean, I saw a stat that flashed on the screen yesterday. I'm pretty sure, maybe I saw it on social media, that Mahomes is like 6 of 19 with downfield passes this season. Like, the accuracy is not great. I think, obviously he doesn't have a wide receiver to really stretch the field like we're used to seeing, whether it was Tyreek Hill in the past. Honestly, Juju Smith-Schuster to an extent did that a year ago for Kansas City. He doesn't really have anybody to really consistently do that game in and game out. He threw the ball 41 times yesterday and had 281 yards through the air. So, he's not really getting big chunk plays, and we're used to seeing that offense have those big chunk plays
Yeah, they're
game
not
in and
giving
game
it
out
to him.
throughout the entire. They're not. I mean, the defenses, are adjusting to that for sure. But we're seeing a lot more dump offs, short, intermediate passes from Patrick Mahomes. The deep ball is not really there like we've seen in years past. And honestly, like, even the times that, and I noticed it a couple different times in the Jets game a week ago. I noticed it a couple different times in the Vikings game yesterday. There are some balls that are being thrown downfield where Mahomes is kind of underthrowing them. There was one that was a defensive pass interference on the Vikings that you're going to get every single time, simply because the ball was like 2 or 3 yards underthrown and the receiver had to go into the defender to get the ball. Like, it's happening more than I think we're used to seeing from Patrick Mahomes. So that the accuracy is not quite there at the level that we've seen it before. And he doesn't really have the weapons that we're used to seeing him have. And the defenses are starting to lock down more on those deep passes. So all those things combined, we're starting to see more of a kind of a short to intermediate type passing game from Kansas City, which really isn't what we've seen before.
Well, it's what we saw all year last year. I mean, it goes back to
I
the
don't know if we've
Super
seen it
Bowl.
at this clip though, right? Like, I mean, I
Well,
think we saw it to an extent last year.
MVS is supposed to be the deep threat. That's what he's here. That's why he's in Kansas City, is to be the deep threat. He's just um he's just not that good. I mean, he's fine. Like, I'm glad he's there. I'm glad his experience is there. Don't get me wrong, but they haven't been able to do that. But I think there's several. Tampa laid out this blueprint in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs, right? Like, we're going to compress everything and we're not going to let the Chiefs beat us over the top. Then we saw in that following season, for a while, the Chiefs continue to struggle with that. And then they finally said, you know what? We're going to take what the defense gives us. Okay. Then last year we saw them embrace that fully, and it was like, well, okay, there's your MVP. This year, there's clearly not the same rapport with these wide receivers, and Travis Kelce's been somewhat limited this season because of injury. But if you go back to the season after the Super Bowl, when the Chiefs struggled for a little while before they were willing to fully embrace, like, teams are not going to let us go over the top on them. That's what the league has done across the board now last year. And that's why we saw quarterbacks struggle last year. And quarterbacks continue to struggle. It's not like it's almost been like this philosophical change that we've seen right across the league, where defenses are consistently not allowing quarterbacks to do that. And a lot of quarterbacks are really struggling with that. And so the Chiefs are, they're probably 8 months ahead of the field in that adjustment. So I think they're more comfortable in it. But the group this year has not performed to the level that we expected. And hopefully, if you're the Chiefs, they haven't performed to the level that they will by the time this season is done. I think that's the big key there. Rashee Rice looks good, and with more time should look better. Ross made a big play. Sky Moore is aggressive, if nothing else, right? Like, he's confident, it seems like. Can that develop into something more? I don't know. But there, that's where, like, Juju was not as talented as he once was, or this group probably, but he's experienced, and he did develop a nice connection with Mahomes on, adjusting to plays. But with Kelce banged up this year, that's the player they've been missing. Like, who's going to be the guy that just is in sync with Mahomes enough to adjust? It was obviously Tyreek Hill for a long time, and Kelce. That's when the offense was at its best. Then it was just Kelce. And now with Kelce limited, it's like, okay, who's going to do this? Because they're not going to be able to go over the top.
And that's all well and good. And you're right on all of that. But I don't think that you can discount the fact that there have been, honestly, some woefully underthrown passes in the last couple of weeks. There have been a few. Mahomes is not quite as sharp as we've seen him in the
Absolutely.
past. And you know what? Honestly, I don't know because I haven't watched the tape, really intently in years past. I don't know if it is more of the passes are being badly underthrown, or in years past, you still had kind of that, but the receivers were able to go and get the ball. Like it might be a combination of both. Like, like
Yeah.
when you had Tyreek Hill, you had honestly Juju, even guys like McCole Hardman, Demarcus Robinson, those guys had worked a long time with Patrick Mahomes. And maybe they knew, like, hey, there are going to be times we're going to have to go and get the ball more than it just is going to be put right in our breadbasket. It might be a combination of both this season, but I've noticed more. Like it really started in my mind with the Jets game a week ago, and then a couple of passes
Yeah.
yesterday that were badly underthrown that we really haven't seen, at least from my perspective, from Mahomes really at any time in his career.
Mahomes is a tick off. There's no question. And he's
Yeah.
allowed to be too. Like it's okay that he's a tick off, right? There's no like reason to worry about it, but he is a human and can be going through a stretch for whatever reason. Like who knows what that reason might be.
I just don't know if the wide receivers in the past were able to compensate for any kind of being a tick off from
Yeah.
Mahomes. Like we didn't,
have
we
to like
didn't. Yeah,
I'd have
maybe
to
we didn't
jog my memory.
notice
I don't
if
know.
Mahomes
Right.
was really off at all because the receivers made up for it. And now you don't have the receivers to be able to make up for it.
Yeah. Some of the greatest quarterbacks in football, by the way, are really good at that. Aaron Rodgers, who's a great arm talent, right? Underthrows passes all the time because he knows it gives his guys a chance at either the catch or the flag. Matt
Right.
Stafford might be the king of doing that. Matt Stafford does that all the time. Like some really great throwers do that by design because they know in a certain situation, there's a really good chance you'll get a flag.
Yeah.
You got to have the right receiver for that, right? Like Aaron Rodgers did it so often with Devontae Adams. Like if Devontae Adams could have gotten the yards for the pass interference penalties he drew, I mean, it would be incredible. But they had that play down like it was scientific for them. Like just underthrow it. You know Adams is going to come back over the top of the defender to try and get it, and there's not much the defender can do. I don't know if that's what Mahomes is doing. I know in the Jets game it's not what he was doing. In the Jets game, he underthrew the balls.
Yeah.
I mean, he said as much. It was very clear if you read his, if you read his lips that he was not particularly happy with those throws. I think he might just be a tick off. I think that's okay. Here's the good news for the Chiefs, though. Right now, they have been able to run the ball. So that's the other thing with this offense. If they can run the ball, all of this is going to be okay. They have a defense that's playing high, a high level that would allow the Chiefs to run the ball. And I think that they will. I mean, look, they weren't running it effectively yesterday at all, but they still gave Isaiah Pacheco 16 carries and the running backs, themselves. They gave the running backs 20 carries in a game where they weren't running the ball. I think that's meaningful, right? And at some point, if you can continue to effectively run the ball, the top will come off of a defense.
Right.
And then it becomes which Chiefs receiver can be that guy. That's what Marquez Valdez-Scantling was in Green Bay, is supposed to be here, hasn't been. So do any of these other young receivers, can they become deep ball guys? I don't know the answer to that. I have no idea. I think Justin Ross would be the most likely to be able to do that. I think Sky Moore and Rashee Rice are more, run after the catch guys. So maybe I don't know. But
I'm glad
if they can run the ball, they'll get deep balls.
I'm glad Ross got some snaps yesterday. I'm glad that I know
Me
he had
too.
a couple of drops, but I was glad that he got out on the field. When you've got basically your clear cut number 1 and number 2 receivers in MVS and Sky Moore once again disappearing. I mean, those guys combined for 3 catches for 23 yards in the game yesterday. You've got to have some other guys, whether it's Rashee Rice or Justin Ross, Justin Watson, other guys step up in the absence of Sky Moore and MVS. You mentioned the run game. Yeah, it wasn't effective really for the most part. I think in the, to start the game off, it was. Pacheco was able to get, break off some good runs, but the Vikings defense kind of clamped down after that. Here's my major issue. I understand he's a former first-round pick, but the Chiefs cannot give any more carries to Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Can't do it.
He does.
Three attempts for 4 yards. He's not good. He doesn't have the explosiveness that we were used to seeing from him. And I don't know if it's more of a case of like they feel like they have to give him carries because he's a former first-round pick? I don't really know.
That's not why.
But there's nothing that kills a drive quicker than Kansas City giving the ball to CEH.
Can I take you back and see if you agree with me now? I don't think that you did then. My issue with the backfield depth has been Isaiah Pacheco probably doesn't need to carry the ball more than 16 times a game because of the way he runs. He's going to get hurt. And I was never comfortable with Clyde Edwards-Helaire being they need something else.
It seemed like a McKinnon game. In my mind, it seemed like, this is an opportunity for McKinnon to get a couple of carries.
They're also being careful with McKinnon because McKinnon always gets hurt. And I know that they want McKinnon for the postseason. That's why I've always said, I was never comfortable with the backfield depth. I've always thought they needed somebody else to spell Pacheco, because if they're lucky enough that Pacheco stays healthy all year, which again, I think seems unlikely, you can't give him more than that, 16, 17 carries, because he's a violent runner. He's going to get hurt. Yeah. The law of averages will play through. So I'm still not certainly comfortable with Clyde Edwards-Helaire being the other guy.
And I don't know, I'm sure that in the mind of the Chiefs, it's like, okay, he's a change of pace guy, but the change of pace is like a complete stop is basically what it comes down to.
I know.
This season in a purely backup role, CEH has carried the ball 28 times for 93 yards. 28 times for 93 yards. Stop giving him the football.
Well, you can't stop giving him the football because somebody's got to take it. And your other two backs are going to be a little injury prone. That's why I think they need somebody else in there, quite frankly. I'd rather call what was the guy we liked in the preseason? What's his name?
Deneric Prince. And then they've also got Deneric Prince. They've got both of those guys on the practice
I'd rather
squad.
have either of those guys carrying it 6 or 7 times a game to spell Pacheco. But hey, the Chiefs won. And again, in Minnesota, desperate, all that stuff, get out of there with the win and you're good. I'm good with the win. I got no issues with the win in the aftermath. We'll see how the offense develops over the season, and we'll certainly have more on the Chiefs as we make our way through today and the week. When we come back, the Chiefs did what they needed to do. The K-State Wildcats did not. It's Jacob Albracht and Tommy Castor on Sports Daily. We'll talk about the Cats next.
Your phone call is welcome. 869-1240. Sports Daily on 97.5 and 1240. KFH, Wichita's #1 sports talk radio.
Introducing IHOP's new menu with delicious items like perfectly crispy yet fluffy waffles in 5 different flavors. Warm, flaky buttermilk biscuits to fit any craving. Juicy, satisfying steak burgers for any time of the day. A whole line of delicious, decadent eggs Benedicts, and so much more. You may just have to take a break from your regular and find a brand new favorite. But don't worry, we won't tell the pancakes. Only at IHOP. Let's put a smile on your plate. Download the app and earn free food with every order.
There's never been a better time for football fans to join the huddle for all the hard-hitting action with BetMGM. Download the BetMGM app and use bonus code BUZZER200 when you place a $10 pregame moneyline wager on any pro football game. You'll receive $200 in bonus bets instantly, regardless of your wager's outcome. Sign up now and discover BetMGM's daily promotions, player props, live betting options, and more. Download the app or go to BetMGM.com and sign up today to get started. BetMGM and GameSense remind you to play responsibly and offer resources to help you make appropriate choices. BetMGM.com for T's and C's. 21 plus to wager. Kansas only. New customer offer. All promotions are subject to qualification and eligibility requirements. Rewards issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets. Bonus bets expire 7 days from issuance. Please gamble responsibly. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel.
Our employees at Don Linger Construction are the reason why we are a leader in our industry.
I like working for Don Linger Construction because our jobs keep us close to home.
Don Linger Construction is now hiring positions in and around the Wichita area. We're employee-owned and offer competitive weekly pay and benefits. Quick start your new career and join our growing team. Apply online at dondlinger.biz. That's DONDLINGER.biz. Don Linger Construction is an EEO-compliant employer. Veterans, women, and minorities are encouraged to apply.
I'm Tony Kornheiser, and this is my show. What, you're expecting something different? Whether you're looking for deep, insightful dives into the day's top sports stories, that's why we have guests like Nigel, or simply how to get change for $100, You'll find it on the Tony Kornheiser Show. From football picks from the best prognosticators in the business, including a monkey, to real-time baseball playoff analysis, to traffic in an area where you don't live. We got you covered. My friends come on, and you know them. Listen on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts.
For the ones who get it done, the most important part is the one you need now. And the best partner is the one who can deliver. That's why millions of maintenance and repair pros trust Grainger, because we have professional-grade supplies for every industry, even hard-to-find products. And we have same-day pickup and next-day delivery on most orders. But most importantly, we have an unwavering commitment to help keep you up and running. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Hey, did you know Vistaprint prints everything a small business needs? Like if a barbershop needs signage, we print outdoor signs, posters, and banners. Or if a ballet school needs merch, we print tote bags, t-shirts, hoodies, hats. Or if a coffee shop needs a total refresh, Vistaprint designs logos and prints it on menus, mugs, paper bags, anything. Because with Vistaprint, the printabilities are endless. Print it all with 25% off for new customers with code NEW25 at Vistaprint.com.
Yo, J Balvin here. Verizon just hooked me up with a new iPhone 15 Pro with titanium. How can you get one? By switching to my plan at your Verizon store, get the amazing new iPhone 15 Pro on them. When you trade in any iPhone, any model, any condition, guaranteed. And listen to my new song, Dientes, on your way to get the new iPhone 15 Pro.
Don't miss out. Switch to my plan from Verizon today. It's your Verizon. $999.99, 128 GB only. Device payment purchase or full retail purchase with new smartphone line on unlimited ultimate plan required. Less $1,000 trade-in or promo credit applied over 36 months. Promo credit ends if eligibility requirements are no longer met. 0% APR.
At the UPS store, we know this upcoming holiday is when things can get busy for small business owners.
Exactly. My to-do list and I don't take days off.
That's why you can count on us to be open and ready to help with every small business need, whether it's packing and shipping or if it's just to check your mailbox.
That's almost everything on my to-do list. My list and I can take the day off.
Your local, the everything to help you be unstoppable store. The UPS store. Be unstoppable. The UPS store locations are independently owned. Product services, pricing, and hours may vary. See Center for details.
It's game time in Hornet Nation. The Emporia State Hornets are back in action and better than ever. Get your season tickets live at the Hive VIP Experience Passes in all sport passes today at ESUHornets.com.
Call in and give us your thoughts.
It's absolutely crazy.
316-869-1240. This is your home for sports. 97.5 and 1240 KFH. The commercials are over.
Yo, I haven't got all day.
869-1240.
Time to get busy.
This is Sports Daily on KFH.
All right, welcome back in, everybody. Sports Daily here. Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor with you. Glad to be with you here on the program today. Major League Baseball playoffs underway. You've got the NLDS games tonight. If you're looking for more daily baseball coverage on the Odyssey app, check out John Boy Media's Baseball Today, the hottest topics in baseball, Monday through Friday. Tommy, our picks last week, Jad just sent us these during the break. Tommy sets a world record on picks last week by going 0-10. 0-10. Woo! 5-5 for me, 6-4 for Paul. But one of those O's for all of us was K-State. K-State.
Can I before we get into K-State, I just want to mention I feel the need to respond to my 0-10 outing over the weekend. I've actually turned it into a positive in my mind.
Oh, okay.
Because and here's why. I feel like I'm doing the listeners a service here, because now to pick, like if I pick something, to pick the exact opposite, to bet the exact opposite of what I'm picking.
The Costanza effect.
Yeah, like you were 5-5. I mean, you're not helping anybody out, because you could be right, you could be wrong. Nobody knows. Everybody knows I'm going to be wrong. So fade me accordingly and pick exactly the opposite of what I do when you're betting. Like I feel like I'm doing everybody a really good.
15 games under 500 on the young season.
I understand that. I know. I'm reading the email too.
So it's not a bad strategy. It's not a bad strategy. It's the Costanza, right? Do the opposite of what you think.
Do the exact opposite of what I'm picking.
K-State, boy. I think that is right up there with disappointing losses of the regular season for Chris Kleiman. we were texting back and forth, and I was working high school football while I was watching, so it's hard for me to respond directly all the time. But it was so I was ready to, and still am ready to give Oklahoma State credit here. Like I know, and I'm curious this week to talk to our buddy Tim Fitzgerald, who was ready to basically put dirt on the corpse of Mike Gundy, that he had lost it, doesn't have a prayer. And I'm not ready for that. I still think he's one of the top coaches in this league. And some stuff came out as this game was happening when K-State could just, and by the way, K-State still almost figured out a way, right, to get that win, but they just kept making mistakes. Mike Gundy, number one, Tommy, it was Brett McMurphy, I believe, has won 8 of the last 9 games when Oklahoma State was an underdog at home, not covered the spread, outright won 8 of the last 9 times his team was a home underdog. The guy can still coach. Oklahoma State still has talent. K-State was definitely more talented than Oklahoma State. But Gundy wins these games, and Chris Kleiman has not won in Stillwater, and he said that this game will be decided at the lines of scrimmage. I don't know if that was the case. It was kind of decided on some really untimely turnovers and a game we haven't seen out of Will Howard in 2 years. That was really bad for Will Howard. I know a lot of people are like, oh, we got to bring Avery Johnson in right now. And I'm like, guys, like, Will Howard earned the right to finish that game. Like, Will Howard has been very important to this program. Like, you're not, for a true freshman, and I'm as bullish on Avery Johnson as anybody else. In that moment of that game, when they still are able to and trying to find a way to win it, which they were very much in the mix of late, you can't just do that to Will Howard. That's a fine line there. Now, I will say, I think it's reasonable for them to not just hand the reins over like in that moment, but I do think you could have mixed Avery in a little bit. I think there's a happy medium there. That would have been seemingly the good spot to get a little more Avery Johnson, right? Like, hey, Will, like, chill, sit down, catch your breath. We're going to let him have this drive, and then we'll get you right back in there. But to just hand over the reins in a moment's notice because Will Howard has a rough game on the road, it's like, I don't know that's – I mean, Chris Kleiman's not doing anybody a bunch of favors if he's ready to pull the trigger like that.
Well, I texted you this during the game, and I'm going to stand by it and double down on it. It was a crime in my mind for them to not at least see what Avery Johnson could do in that game. I mean, I know that they felt like they still had a shot with Will Howard. I know they felt like they were trying to come back, but man, just the difference that
they
Avery
were coming
Johnson,
back.
They were, but I mean, the different kind of athlete that Avery Johnson is, he gives you a different kind of wrinkle. And what they were doing with Will Howard wasn't really working. And Howard didn't have a good game. At that point, that's a prime opportunity for you to at least like sprinkle in some Avery Johnson to see if what he can do can, provide a spark for this offense. You mentioned Mike Gundy. And look, I'm not going to be disrespectful to Mike Gundy. He's been around for a long time. He's done really, really good things in his career at Oklahoma State. That was not Mike Gundy's coaching that Oklahoma State won the game. That was a letdown by the Wildcats. That was turnovers by Will Howard. That was mistakes that I mean, like I texted you at one point during the game.
You don't think there's any game planning involved with Will Howard's confusion on some of those
No,
routes?
I think that there was, but man, like the Wildcats shot themselves in the foot so many different times, like self-inflicted mistakes. There was a 4th and goal situation where the center for Kansas State just snapped the ball right past Will Howard and, ended up turning the ball over. Like there were all of these self-inflicted issues that the Wildcats had that had nothing at all to do with Mike Gundy coaching that game, had nothing at all to do with the Cowboys and what they were able to do in the game. Now they were able to put points up on the board. Oklahoma State was, and there were some things that Gundy did that I thought, they looked more competent than they have basically throughout the course of this entire season.
Well, they're not very talented. They're not very talented. So
they looked more talented. They looked more talented.
They played above their talent level.
They absolutely did, for sure.
Yeah.
And sure, like you can put that on Gundy and say, man, Gundy did a good job getting his guys ready to go for this game. But when I look at the game and I look at the outcome, to me, it all comes down to Kansas State shooting themselves in the foot.
Kansas State did KU a big favor. I'll tell you that, because now KU's got to go in there, and it's like this warning signal of what can happen there. And, KU, they got to go take, again, Gundy has won 8 of the last 9 times his team has been an underdog at home. 1, not covered, 1. They'll be a home underdog again Saturday against KU. So, can he do this 2 times? I don't know. Stillwater's a great environment. Stillwater's awesome. On a Friday night like that, it's even worse for the opposition. But, you get through it, and now they're sitting here. I mean, that's a big win for them. KU, their game with them this weekend becomes very interesting. Like, I'm intrigued by that. But the bigger picture is K-State. And I saw people, and it was part of group threads and stuff, say, oh, KU's going to beat K-State now. KU's better. And I'm like, again, I don't want to overreact to what we saw. I want to appropriately react to what we saw. Right now, the appropriate reaction feels like K-State played a terrible game. Does that all of a sudden make them less talented than KU? I'm not sure that I'm going there. I mean, KU's going to be dealing with a backup quarterback, I think, probably for a while. So, are we really going there? And I don't care what KU does this weekend, but I'm not ready to get and say, oh, Sunflower Showdown, like it's KU's now. I'm like, God, let's just see what the reaction is.
This is a different kind of loss for Kansas State on Friday than when they lost on the road at Missouri.
Absolutely.
Completely different.
Agree.
Completely different, right? Like, Missouri is a different class of talent.
Missouri just took LSU to the limits, right? Like, they're good.
I mean, Friday night's game for the Wildcats, by far the most disappointing game of the season, and one of the most disappointing games, I would say, in the Chris Kleiman era at Kansas State.
Yep, I
so
agree.
I mean, they've got to shake it off.
Now,
and
look,
they've got to shake it off quickly.
The asterisk on that is if Oklahoma State all of a sudden catches fire, you're like, okay. But the reason it's to me, one of, if not the worst regular season losses is because I don't think Oklahoma State's very good.
No,
like last year, when KU was surprised at home with a loss, it was to a really good team, right? The season proved that out. Now, in Missouri's a really good team. I don't think Oklahoma State's all of a sudden going to be a good team. Now, I'll be willing to be wrong on that, but I don't think that's coming.
And also, by the way, the Big 12 is relatively open as far as the very top of the conference. Like, you've got Oklahoma beating Texas in the Red River rivalry. You've got Kansas right there. Kansas State had an opportunity Friday night to really, I think, solidify being in the top tier of the Big 12 because it can be competitive. It's open right now. And, I mean, they dropped the ball big time.
Oklahoma beating Texas is going to make it really hard for anybody besides Oklahoma or Texas to play in the Big 12 championship. That when you see that happen, it's like, okay, we knew Texas was probably ahead of the league. Now it's very obvious that Oklahoma is too. It's going to be tough for somebody to catch one of those two teams. We'll see. Definitely still on the table. And look, that's one conference loss for Kansas State, same number that Texas has. That's the thing about this too. Like, if you're Kansas State, you still have every opportunity to do what you wanted to do this year. You're going to have a chance to go win the Big 12 championship still. So go for it.
Hey, we'll come right. By the way, Red River rivalry. I mean, a year ago, Oklahoma lost 49-0 to Texas, and they finished 6-7. The very next year, they come back and they beat the Longhorns. That's pretty impressive.
Oh, biggest win of the weekend. Went to Oklahoma for sure. All right, we'll come back. That IHOP hotline is open, 869-1240. We'll bounce around the rest of the sports world. We got Shreyas Laddha to talk KU football coming at the top of the hour. Shockers in an AAC preseason poll out there as well. Lots to come on this Monday edition of Sports Daily.
Saving money.
Oh, okay, take it easy. We're going on the air.
This is Sports Daily on KFH.
All right, welcome back in, everybody. Sports Daily here on KFH. Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor, riding with you on this Monday edition. We've got KU football talk with our KU insider, Sri Islata, coming at the top of the hour. We'll get his take as well on late night at the Fog, which I heard, Bill Self was not pleased with on the floor.
Not a happy camper, no.
So we'll get to that a little bit, which is it's kind of funny. We'll also get to some shocker basketball. Wichita State picked 8th in the AAC. Let's go there, Tommy. That is, to me, when I saw that, it's the best news Paul Mills could have ever gotten. Shockers picked 8th. I like it for a couple of reasons for Paul Mills. One, and let me just say, I think the Shockers will finish better than 8th. Okay, that's not even in the stratosphere. I think they'll be top 3 or 4. I think. It's hard, though, when it's a new team, and clearly it is for the voters. But what that does for Paul Mills is a couple of things. It gives him an easy thing to stick on the bulletin board, first and foremost, right? Look, nobody's no respect, right? Chip on your shoulder, always the greatest motivator in sports. We all know that. Gives you that. That's the easy check in the right column for Paul Mills. But the other thing is, Tommy, for Paul Mills, is it probably sets that expectation from Shocker fans just a little bit lower than maybe reality is, right? Polls are what they are, and they're really difficult now, especially with the transfer portal in college basketball, when so many teams look like we've never seen them look before. So it's really hard to do a poll. If I'm not a voter, by the way, in the AAC poll, if they sent me one to vote on, I wouldn't be comfortable doing it because I wouldn't know enough about just almost all the teams, right? So it is a difficult task. However, like we can all complain about preseason top 25s and all that and how they do establish an early benchmark. And so for fans, it probably does allow Shocker fans to say, okay, well, here's maybe where we should start thinking about the expectations this season. I think they're much higher than that in reality, but it does give, sort of a more of a chip shot field goal right out of the gates for Paul Mills to exceed those expectations and build that early buzz.
Yeah, I think the only reason why the Shockers were picked where they were is simply because they only have 4 returners. That's the only reason why, right? Like, you've only got 4 returners, you've got a bunch of newcomers and a brand new head coach. I'm a little bit surprised. I thought they might have been a little bit higher in the polls, but the other reason why this year's poll is so difficult to gauge is obviously all the things that you just mentioned, but also you've got newcomers coming into the league. And so it makes it even more difficult, right? Like, you don't have Houston anymore. You don't have Cincinnati anymore. You do have Florida Atlantic, who made that Cinderella run a year ago. They're now in the American. They were picked, Dusty May's team picked to win the American. You've got another new team in UAB. They're in the top 5, but it makes it really hard to gauge overall because you've got brand new teams now entering the conference, and who knows how those teams are going to be able to perform against, you would think, a little bit higher caliber of opponent in the American. So who knows? I mean, really, you're kind of throwing darts at this point because of all the reasons you mentioned and the fact that you've got brand new teams in the conference.
Look, if the Shockers finish 8th in the AAC this year, it's going to be a big problem, right? Like, that's the reality of it. But early in the season, it does, I think, ease some of what will be expected from fans, from some fans, right? The Shockers did not hire Paul Mills to come in year 1 and finish 8th in the AAC. Okay. Nope. It needs to be at the top end, especially when the conference looks like it will take a step back from what it was.
Well, they finished better than 8th last season when they had Isaac Brown. Like, you got to come in and improve on that right away.
You have to. And that's what we've said from the beginning. So it is an interesting placement, though, because I think the team has a chance to be more talented, right? And we'll see. They certainly look more talented than in exhibitions that we don't know a whole lot about. What players are going to be able to play, we don't fully know yet. We saw some reporting from Taylor Eldridge that Jalen Ricks wasn't there, which is interesting. Bijan Cortez may have a hard time finding his way on the floor. I don't know how much that's going to impact the Shockers, but they're things that they're dealing with. But the reality is, to me, Kenny Poto has become the most important player because I think his potential is the highest. Now, that's just me. I could be wrong about that, but I do think there is another level for Kenny Poto to reach. Colby Rogers finally gets in there. And then they've got some other talented guys certainly coming in. They should be fine to finish ahead of 8th. That just gives you an expectation. Who was picked last in the Big 12 last year, Tommy?
In the Big 12?
Yeah, last year. Do you remember?
K-State.
Exactly.
K-State was picked last.
So you can throw these in the trash can. Like, they don't matter. Only matters because it can be used as motivation for Mills, which is important. It is important. Like, we can all pretend like it doesn't matter, but it matters. When somebody doubts you, it motivates you to be better, to prove them wrong. So right now, the Shockers on the court have a really easy thing early on to say, this is what they think of us. Let's go prove them wrong. And for fans, it gives some insight into the unknown of the league. So you and I, our expectations are higher than most, I think. We've taken some grief for that. Like, I want the Shockers to contend for the league right away because that's what, you've got to be better than Isaac Brown to replace Isaac Brown. There is no, everybody in college basketball is rebuilding now. Everyone rebuilding. So I don't think that's the general consensus. I think it's ours, but it does give them an achievable goal right out of the gate. So not the worst news in the world for Wichita State. There's nothing bad about it. Nothing. I don't care. It gives them a motivator. I like it. I like when they're picked down like that. If they embrace play angry, they'll really like it. When we come back, Sri Islata joins us here on the program. We'll talk a little KU. What about their basketball team at late night? And big weekend test this weekend coming up in football. We'll do that next on Sports Daily.
Laugh Out Loud Mornings with Bob and Tom on 97.5 and 1240 KFH, Wichita's most listened to sports radio. Always live on the free Odyssey app.
Kevin Harlan here from Monday Night Football on Westwood One. From Las Vegas, it's week 5 of the NFL season, ending with the matchup of two proud franchises looking for a spark. It's the 1-3 Raiders hosting Jordan Love and the 2-2 Green Bay Packers. Join me and Mike Golick from Las Vegas for all the action of the Packers and the Raiders on Monday Night Football.
Get ready for the game with more details and preview at westwoodonesports.com.
For the ones who get it done, the most important part is the one you need now. And the best partner is the one who can deliver. That's why millions of maintenance and repair pros trust Grainger, because we have professional-grade supplies for every industry, even hard-to-find products. And we have same-day pickup and next-day delivery on most orders. But most importantly, we have an unwavering commitment to help keep you up and running. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Oh, this cold.
Honey?
Honey?
Honey, you need DayQuil Severe Honey.
DayQuil Severe Honey gives you powerful cold and flu symptom relief with a honeylicious taste, because life doesn't stop for a cold.
Okay, I'm ready to go.
Now I'm getting a cold.
Honey.
Try DayQuil Severe Honey for powerful cold and flu relief. DayQuil Severe with honey flavor. The daytime coughing, aching, stuffy head, fever, honeylicious, power through your day medicine. Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
My serve.
The choices we make affect the moments we live. That's why who you choose for health insurance doesn't really matter until you really need it. With Medicare Advantage from Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas, you'll know that no matter which moment you choose, we've got you covered on and off the pickleball court. So the moment there's an ouch or whoopsie, we'll be there with a wow and whenever you need us. With more coverage options than ever and more reasons to love your plan, like premium starting at $0, dental, vision, and hearing coverage, and an allowance toward approved over-the-counter items, the choice is simple. Medicare Advantage from Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas. Call 888-565-4199 or visit bcbsks.com/enroll now. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas offers Medicare Advantage PPO plans. Enrollment dependent on contract renewal. Not connected with or endorsed by the U.S. government or the federal Medicare program.
Patterson Legal is the way to go. Call 550-0000.
Pizza John's has been serving Derby since 1969. We pride ourselves on our great pizza and personal service. We treat all of our customers like family. Pizza John's, 208 South Baltimore, purveyors of round meals and flat snacks. Order your Pizza John's today.
Truck Stuff is to your truck, Jeep, or really any vehicle with an early bird registration of just $20 or $25 the day of the event if there's any spots left. For our second annual Gearing Up Against Cancer event, all proceeds will benefit Victory in the Valley, so come sample Gearhead Coffee. It'll be on sale that day along with all Truck Stuff swag. Enter for great raffle prizes and help us vote for top winners to take home Truck Stuff gift certificates. Sign up today at Truck Stuff, 427 North Washington.
Truck Stuff.
An exciting era of Shocker basketball is right around the corner with new head coaches Paul Mills and Terry Nooner leading this year's men's and women's teams. Take in the electric sights and sounds of Charles Koch Arena as a season ticket holder and be rewarded with a collector's replica of the arena. Plus, there are all sorts of new game day improvements coming to your house on the prairie, including fan-friendly concession pricing, simplified entry into the arena, and thrilling enhancements to the game presentation. Join Shocker Nation and reserve your season tickets in the Roundhouse by calling 316-978-FANS.
Tune in to the Retire Hour Show Saturday at 7 a.m. on KFH or online at kfhradio.com. Tune in to the Retire Hour Show Saturday at 7 a.m. on KFH or online at kfhradio.com.
Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor. This is Sports Daily on Wichita's #1 sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
All right, welcome back in, everybody. Hour number 2 of Sports Daily. Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor here, joined by Shreyas Laddha, our KU insider, writing for the KU Star, beat reporter for both football and basketball. Shreyas, how are you this morning? Busy weekend there in Lawrence.
Yeah. I've been good. Honestly, probably as good as a weekend as you can have with how KU played against UCF. And to be honest with you, I think that was their most impressive win of the season.
Oh, I agree with that. Considering all the circumstances. No Jalen Daniels still. I think KU fans can reasonably just not expect Jalen Daniels for a while, if at all, the rest of the way. But 51 points Behind Jason Bean, they only throw it 12 times. What do you do when you don't have Jalen Daniels? Well, you'd like to line up and, run it for 400 yards, Shreyas. What in the world? Like, that's a pretty good recipe when you don't have your quarterback in there.
No, absolutely. I mean, Devin Neal is showing he's a, NFL caliber talent. Highshaw put up 100+ yards, and Dylan McDuffie almost had 100. So, Kansas fans, I think, can breathe a little sigh of relief because, if you can lean on the run game, this is a team that's going to win, 8, 9, 10 wins, especially if Jalen it comes back later this season.
Sharice, I really liked the game plan that the Jayhawks had going into this game against UCF. And of course, they had multiple days to get Jason Bean ready to go, to build a game plan around him. And really, I thought that, them really leaning on Devin Neal and Daniel Highshaw, and then, of course, Dylan McDuffie later in the game, it clearly softened up the UCF defense, and it allowed Jason Bean, when he did pass the ball, to have some really high percentage throws. Knowing that, we're probably going to be dealing with the Jalen Daniels injury moving forward. Obviously, defenses and up next will be Oklahoma State and Stillwater. They're going to adjust to that sort of game plan. But knowing that and knowing the way that the Jayhawks want to build their offensive game plan, I mean, how do you feel like this can move forward with Jason Bean at quarterback?
I mean, to be honest with you, I feel like everyone knows Kansas is going to run the ball. It's not a secret. They've ran the ball even with Jalen playing quarterback more this year than last year. So I think in a way, it's just this offensive line is so tremendous at creating holes and, getting opportunities that I think that is even better than what they had last year. And, Devin Neal is having a great year, a much better year than even last year. And he's pretty good last year. Highshaw has been a great compliment to him. And they have a guy, a third running back who could be a 1 or 2 in a lot of other teams in the conference in Dylan McDuffie. And like you said, it takes the pressure off Jason Bean to kind of make the throws he needs to make and nothing, go too crazy with it. I'm curious to see what happens against OSU because Kansas has historically struggled against them at Stillwater. I think they've won once since '95, and that was back in 2007. So it'll be an interesting kind of matchup just because, Kansas is 1-9 in the last 10 against Oklahoma State, but they beat them last year. So at least they got the one recently.
I mean, they're 1-9-ish against a lot of teams, Shreyas, don't you think? Like that, we got to almost like erase some of those distant memories because it's not the reality of now. But I will also say the reality of now is they're not going to be able to run for 400 yards a game consistently. That's a pretty unreasonable expectation. UCF's not very good defensively. They've got to be able to get more than they got out of Jason Bean. Now, they didn't need it, right? They didn't need it against UCF, so why would you want it? But more's got to come there if Jalen Daniels doesn't come back. Is Jalen Daniels going to come back? Like, what is going on there?
I'm not sure. I think it was interesting that they said post-game that, he was back at the, watching from the inside. So I guess they're just being really precautious. I feel like it's one of those things that, obviously you don't want to speculate, but it could be one of those things that maybe they'll hold him out for a couple of weeks to let him really get fully healthy and feel good. Maybe he comes back after the bye week. And, you could be looking at a Kansas team that only has one loss, coming off the bye. So, you want to let Jalen heal and get to his full potential. And, then they have the gauntlet of the remaining teams left. And, there's KSU, there's Iowa State, there's Cincinnati, there's Texas Tech, and Oklahoma. Those 5 teams, So I'm really curious to see what happens with him long term because as good as the run game has been, they really need, I think, Jalen to beat some of these upper tier Big 12 teams.
So Shreyas, going back to the first half of the UCF game, not only did the Jayhawks overwhelm UCF offensively, but really defensively as well. I mean, and I know that Plumlee for UCF only played, a couple of drives and then really couldn't go any further. And they had to bring in Timmy McClain as the backup quarterback, but UCF was shut out in the first half. And, it's been very clear over the last several years how much maligned the Jayhawks defense has been historically, but that's not the case this year. I mean, it seems like week in and week out, we are seeing so much more from this Jayhawks defense to a point to where I don't think that you can look at them and say this is a weak spot in the program anymore.
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty good. They were like, I think heading into the game, they were like top 15 or top 20 in the nation in sacks. And I think they got 4 sacks against UCF. They do a tremendous job of generating pressure for the quarterback, making quarterbacks uncomfortable. And the secondary is pretty good between, Kenny Logan and, Kobe Bryant. Those guys are having tremendous seasons. So I've been very impressed with KU's defense overall, because I didn't anticipate them being this good this quickly. And I mean, besides the Texas game, which I felt like they hung in there for as long as they could with the amount of time possession the Longhorns had, I don't think KU's had necessarily a really bad defensive game this year. They gave up 350 plus yards against BYU's quarterback, but they, it was like kind of bend don't break there, and they did a tremendous job against the run there. So I've been really, really impressed how good the defensive line has been, and how much of a step forward they've taken, because I was wondering who was going to replace Lonnie Phelps and his sack production, So
yeah, no, look, go ahead.
But yeah, it's been super, super impressive. And honestly, if you're a Jayhawk fan, it's a big step in the right direction, and it shows that you can bring in some transfer talent and mix it in with some homegrown talent, and have what they have done so far.
I want to go back to Jalen Daniels for just a second before we talk a little hoops, Shreyas. Like, the likelihood, and this is just like water cooler type top. I don't know if you've heard any of this, but I mean, I suppose with all this happening, there's a decent chance we see a Daniels return next year. I mean, that's the big question I get from people is, well, with all of this, what's the likelihood he'll be the quarterback next year?
I mean, I don't want to speculate, but I think he'll come back if he feels like, he hasn't really left his mark. He's a guy that, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I see him playing on Sundays, right? So you need a little more tape there, I think. And so I wouldn't be surprised if he comes back and, hopefully he's healthy, or, depending on what happens the next couple of weeks, see how that plays out. But I guess it just really depends on when he comes back this season to speculate, like if he comes back next year. But, if he comes back, God forbid, this week, right? And he plays great and he's healthy the rest of the year and, puts up some numbers, I wouldn't be surprised if he declares for the draft. But if he doesn't come back for a couple of weeks and he's, kind of slow getting back, you could be looking at something where, he decides to come back and, wants to make a bigger mark in his last year.
Shreyas, this weekend, the Jayhawks are on the road in Stillwater. I know that you had a wedding that you were attending over the weekend, so I don't know if you had a chance to watch Kansas State on Friday night in Stillwater, but the Wildcats had a really poor outing on the road against a Cowboys team that has really honestly struggled this year. The Jayhawks now going into Stillwater this weekend, and as of right now, they're about 3.5-point favorites. What does Kansas have to watch out for on the road in Stillwater? I know you mentioned the history that the Jayhawks have had, but really specifically this game going up against Mike Gundy, honestly, the struggles that Oklahoma State has had offensively, I don't know if that really comes to play or not. What are you looking out for this game this weekend?
I think, Kansas needs to establish the run game from the get-go. They need to make Jason Bean's job comfortable. They need to get out to an early lead and, really do, I think, a good job of making him feel like he doesn't have to do too much out there. I think that's the biggest thing. And you want Kansas' defense to kind of slow down an Oklahoma State offense that is not as good as UCF's offense. And Alan Bowman is not as good as a QB as either one of UCF's QBs based on his numbers this year. He has 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, and 100 QB rating. So, Kansas has definitely played better QBs in the Big 12. The guy needed to slow down is their lead running back. He's averaging 6.3 yards per carry. He has over 500 yards on the ground in 5 games. So I think if you slow down OSU's run game and establish your run game and get out to the early lead, I feel good if I'm a Jayhawk fan.
Let's talk hoops, Shreyas. What happened down there? You know, we were locked into high school football and the K-State game, and I just keep seeing all this, Bill Self's going to wear these guys out at practice. Like, was it that bad? Like, what had Bill Self apparently so upset? It's an exhibition thing.
Well, I mean, it took him 5 minutes to score a combined 10 points, and there's a 15-minute scrimmage, if that gives you any indication how bad it was. 5 minutes of game time, mind you. And it was really ugly, honestly. There was nobody who really stood out amazingly. KJ Adams had some nice passes. Nick Timberlake made a couple of three threes. That was nice. But, like, if you look at the percentages for both teams, I think one team shot 31%, the other team shot 34%. The defense was better than expected, I'll say that. But Kansas also missed a lot of, open-ish looks, and I think the three-point shooting percentage was horrendous. One team was shooting 14%. The other team shot like 21%. So it was probably as ugly as you can, think of for an exhibition game. And I remember a lot of fans on Twitter were pissed off, and Self was obviously pissed off because that showing was ugly.
How much stake can we put into that? I mean, I've been to late night before. It's an exhibition, but it's also, I mean, there's so much goofing around and playing and having fun. And, you've got a post-game concert, and then you've got the scrimmages, and you've got the half-court shots and all the different, the big spectacle that is late night at the Phog. Can you really, and can Coach Self really take a lot of stake in what he saw from these guys?
Absolutely not. But it's easy to run off that and push these guys and, really, take them to the next level. I'm not worried about Kansas men's basketball this year. And, my one worry with this team is their three-point shooting. And it struggled, again, in exhibition, right? It's going to be hot and cold at times this year. So that's the one, where's the shooting coming from question that I worry about. But, I mean, I really think there's nothing else to take. I mean, Hunter Dickinson was, I think, on top of some other guys back, getting a piggyback ride at one point. For, like, what can you take away from a game like that? The only thing that a little bit concerns me is the three-point shooting, but I think Kansas is going to deal with that all year, where it's going to be hot and cold depending on the game.
I want to go back to, you said the defense looked good. I've thought all along with this class coming in and the return of Harris and Adams, along with some of the new additions and McCullough, like, this to me seems like this could be the best defense in the country kind of a team. How much of that was on display Saturday? And are you of that same mindset that, a normally good defensive team could be elite, like as good as we've ever seen there in Lawrence this year?
I think so. I think they could be really, really good. I mean, they have guys, depending on who they put in at the two-guard spots, there's no negative or weak defenders on the team, And KJ is such a tremendous asset. And like Hunter Dickinson said, he makes his job easier for Hunter, to do the things that he does best defensively and offensively. So, I think between Kevin McCullough, Juan Harris, guys like Marco Jackson, etc., they're lengthy, tall defenders. They're guys that are going to get in your grill. Hunter Dickinson's a pretty decent rim protector. So I think, this team is going to be as good as you can hope for a defense.
All right, Shreyas, what can we expect on the Star from you? People can follow you on social media, but what do we expect for your writing leading up to this Oklahoma State game this week?
So I think my 5 things should be out there soon, if not already out. I did it super early this morning, catching some flights at a 5:20 flight this morning. I'll have my typical, pregame coverage. We'll have my breakdown with former KU quarterback Carter Stanley. So we'll probably look in at some of the run stuff and how the runs opened up. But yeah, just typical stuff. And, as basketball season comes along, there'll be a little more basketball. I know next week is media day for Big 12. So looking forward to that, especially as a big basketball guy. So, you can check out football, basketball. We'll have it all. We have some takeaways up from the scrimmage as well, if you want to read that. And that's pretty much it from my end.
You can get access to all of it at the KC Star. You can find Shreyas on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it. SHRE98 is that handle. We appreciate it, Shreyas. We'll see if KU can avoid the well, the danger that K-State fell into last week this weekend.
Absolutely. I think it should be a fun one.
All right, there goes Shreyas Laddha, our KU insider. Glad to have him in. All the insight. Busy time there at KU. We talked about hoops there a little bit. Some breaking news with hoops as we set this up for the next segment, Tommy. Apparently, everybody now reporting that the Big 12 is back in talks with Gonzaga to jump in. So we'll get into that. We'll tell you what the latest is there as we potentially have a big story brewing for college basketball. That's coming next. We'll preview a little Monday Night Football. Lots still to come. Maybe some Major League Baseball talk as well as the postseason is in full swing. It's all coming up. Sports Daily. IHOP hotline's open. 869-1240 is that IHOP hotline. By the way, that's brought to you by IHOP. And you can try that new Nashville hot chicken and waffles, golden brown Belgian waffle top with 4 crispy chicken strips tossed in a spicy Nashville hot sauce. We'll come right back with more Sports Daily right after this.
Team, we are in it to win it.
Ball driven deep left. Take a good look. You won't see it for long.
97.5 and 1240 KFH.
Dude, you gotta hear this.
Go ahead. I think I want to hear this.
Sports Daily is on KFH.
All right, welcome back. Sports Daily here on KFH. Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor alongside you. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching on our video streams, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch. Okay, so we've got renewed talks according to, I think Seth Davis had it, and then Forbes is on it, and Brett McMurray. Everybody's on it now. Resume talks here between the Big 12 and Gonzaga. I'm reading the Forbes article here during the break, Tommy, and it's interesting because the reasoning that Forbes is getting from their sources is that the Big 12 sees Texas and Oklahoma just dominating in football this year and leaving. So it's almost like this renewed effort to give basketball even more of a push, while football outside of those two schools is seemingly having a pretty down year in the Big 12. Interesting line of thinking. Either way, I love the idea of Gonzaga in, always have. Love the idea of UConn in, always have. Let's just go as big as you can go on Big 12 basketball. I'm all in on that.
I mean, it's 100% a basketball play, right? I mean, that's clearly obvious in all of this. Right. And I think that we've talked about at length before how the Big 12 has the potential, and I think with or without Gonzaga, with or without UConn, the potential to be the best basketball brand in America. And I think that adding a program like Gonzaga clearly strengthens that claim of being the best basketball brand in the country. And knowing that there is uncertainty in the ACC about what's going to happen with that conference moving forward, you can easily swoop in and really stake your claim as the best in the country. And so I don't doubt that Brett Yormark wants that. I totally understand why he's moving in this direction and having these, rejuvenated talks with Gonzaga. I think from a brand perspective, it does make sense as far as what the Big 12 is wanting to do with basketball.
Travel's much easier now with the additions of the two Arizona schools, with the addition of Utah, BYU, right? Colorado. The travel piece of it has gotten much easier than it was to begin with. So that helps, certainly. The numbers being thrown around by Forbes is of the 42-ish million that the Big 12 schools got per year or will get, Gonzaga would be offered like 2. If that ever tells you how much football matters, by the way.
Right.
I don't know what Gonzaga gets paid out in the WCC, probably not anywhere close to that. Is $2 million enough for them to jump? I don't know. Maybe it needs to go a little higher. I mean, if I'm the Big 12 schools, I would sort of just trust your mark on this to some degree of what that split needs to be, how that needs to be negotiated in, because Gonzaga absolutely adds to a basketball league, which is where the money down the road, I think, is going to come from, right? I think, when the economy in the media world resumes business as usual, and I don't know when that's going to happen, but I think it'll be by the next time the Big 12 is trying to negotiate a TV deal. When we get to that point, I think, Big 12, however it lands, will be, either third or fourth, whatever, in the media rights deals in football. And then if they can accomplish this goal of separating out basketball, everybody's going to win. And Gonzaga absolutely helps you do that. So does UConn, by the way. I'd go get them both if they could come. I would take UConn football and deal with it. Again, you're asking current members, you're asking a lot of current members to say, hey, we want to go get UConn. Because if you're Kansas State or right now, you're like, oh, UConn, are they going to add to our football deal? And the answer is no, they're not going to. Not in their current state. However, they would absolutely add to basketball. And if you can get teams to add to basketball, we don't know what that's worth right now. Okay, we don't know. We thought what the brand was worth at the last round, but according to Bob Bowlesby, wasn't very much. And Brett Yormark proved us wrong on that. Timing is everything. It wouldn't be worth that now if they had to negotiate that deal, but that's okay. He got the deal. So I've long thought this has been a goal. If he thinks that has X value, then I think it does. And I think if you're members, that you got to put some faith into that, because what's the downside, right, of adding UConn, for instance, and bringing on a bad football program? What's the downside of that? That it waters down the money. But if you can get the same money, and I'm not sure that you can with UConn, but if you can figure out a way to do it, is that short term worth the long-term gain? I happen to think it is, because not only do you get their men's basketball brand, which is as strong as any in the country right now, you get their women's. And, we don't know what this super basketball league is worth. I think a lot. And if you get Gonzaga, there's going to be value too on the women's side of that, because these networks are seeing and understanding people love to watch high-level women's basketball.
Right.
And so if you have that, I don't know what it's worth, but it's worth something, right? And now you've got two things.
It's the most premier brand of women's basketball, women's college basketball in America.
Absolutely.
UConn basketball always has been that way. Look at Brett Yormark's background. I think it's very important that as we look at where the Big 12 is potentially headed, I think it's important to take a look back at the commissioner's own background. He's a basketball guy. He worked for the Detroit Pistons organization for a while, the Brooklyn Nets for a long time, managed the Barclays Center, went and worked with Jay-Z at Rock Nation, where basketball, obviously we know what Jay-Z's background is with basketball. Brett Yormark is a basketball guy. Now, the Big 12 in any conference in America is going to be driven by football. We all know that. But, I think it would be fair to say that Brett Yormark's passion is basketball. I think it always has been. I think that's a big reason why he's in the role that he's in right now. I think it's a big reason why the Big 12 job was attractive to him, because of the brand of basketball that the Big 12 plays. And then you start adding in other brands like Arizona, which is a legacy program. And then you've got Houston now in the Big 12 and other programs like that. And oh, by the way, you've got KU as a major brand in the Big 12. So if you can go out and you can get a Gonzaga, if you can go out and get a UConn, I totally understand the motivations that Brett Yormark has, knowing his background. If Brett Yormark didn't care about basketball, if he was only a football guy, then you wouldn't see the sort of motivation that he has in having these conversations right now.
I do think it's interesting to see the reporting that this is somewhat reactionary to how bad the football league is this year. And it again gives me confidence that Yormark is constantly looking ahead and not content, because we've talked about it now for weeks. Timing is everything. The Big 12 is lucky that it wasn't going to the table after this year and going after last year instead. Same on the flip side for Pac-12. If you flip that around and both conferences are going to the table after this season, the Big 12 might be in some trouble. Now, that's not everything, right? There's, in-game attendance matters and all that stuff matters, but just quality of product on the field, this will be the best year we've seen out of the Pac-12 top to bottom in a long, long time. And quite frankly, and this is simplifying it, but I think it's true, if Colorado was in the Pac-12 and the Pac-12 went to the table, networks would want Colorado because of Prime. I'm telling you, the timing of all of this is so fortunate for the Big 12. And it is a credit to Brett Yormark jumping out ahead of all this stuff. So if they need to do that now with basketball because they see some perception of weakness in the football brand, which isn't going to last forever, right? It's going to last probably for this year and this year only. But it is Texas and Oklahoma's league again, which is the way it has been for so many years, not last year, but for so many years. It was pretty much those two and everybody else, which is why they're leaving, by the way. But, okay, the brand we know with the teams they brought in, the brand's going to be strong, and it's going to get stronger now with the TV deal and the recruiting advantage, all the things that come with it. But in the meantime, you've also got this other thing happening with basketball. The faster you can make that happen, the better. The faster you could get Gonzaga in. What are the top... So if you take Kansas, Arizona, and Gonzaga, and I'm talking like historically, right? And I know Baylor has entered the equation here, but bigger picture than Baylor's recent insane success. But if you take those three, Duke and Carolina obviously are up there. UConn's up there. So if you added UConn and Gonzaga, to me, you would have 4 of the 6 biggest college basketball brands that there are. I don't think Indiana's there anymore. Maybe it is. Am I forgetting anybody? I mean, it's Duke and Carolina, certainly. But when we're talking about the powerhouse brands, is there anybody else in there with Kansas, Arizona, Gonzaga, and UConn right now? I don't think I'm forgetting
that
about
would
anybody.
Be available? That would potentially
No.
To join
Not
the
that would be
conference?
available, just that exist, right? Just that exist of national interest, right? Those seem like the programs that nationally have that sort of oomph, right, behind their programs. You'd have most of them at that point.
Right.
Oh, Kentucky. Jesse brings up on our
Right,
video stream.
Kentucky,
Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, Kentucky's the other one. I knew I was forgetting one. And so, like, you get in there, and like that's what the Big 12 could boast singularly. And oh, by the way, the ACC's in some trouble here too, right? And if you can start this train now, don't you think Duke has some interest maybe in the Big 12 if you can see
Sure.
that basketball brand? They're
Sure.
very unique, like Kansas, in that basketball's it's not as valuable as football. It's not. Look at what they're about to offer Gonzaga to come in. If you believe that report and they're worth $2 million, hang on. A quick aside, KU fans, understand this, please. Whenever you hear people say, yeah, but basketball carries that weight when we talk about these realignments and football negotiations, no, it doesn't. Not even close. They're willing to offer Gonzaga, if you believe the Forbes report, $2 million when the deal's worth 42. That means 40 of the 42 is what football's worth, and $2 million's not just basketball, what literally every other sport is worth. Now, again, that's initial reporting, and who knows if that's the true number. But don't ever think that these are ever basketball decisions. What the Big 12 is trying to do is something we've never seen before, which is to maximize basketball value. But other than that, these are football decisions, as they always are. That's why I like that the Big 12 is doing this, because they're making some basketball decisions. Now, that's what the market says. I don't believe that. I believe basketball is way more valuable than it gets credit for. And if you can create this TV product that has national appeal, and I think that you can, because what you'll have is consistently top level, high ranked matchups 4 nights a week, 3 nights a week. It's just naturally, as nothing else is on television, going to draw people into it and to become more interested in it. That's what's trying to be done here. And it is a risk to some degree, but I think I think he's right.
Look, by the way, relating it back to football, I saw a stat yesterday that for the first time, I think ever, you've got Kansas, Duke, North Carolina, Kentucky, and UCLA all in the top 25 in football. And it's never happened
UCLA
before.
Is the other one. That's the other brand.
All of those brands, like, not only are they blue blood basketball programs, but they've all taken major steps to improve what they've done on the football field, because we know that that's where the money is. We know that that's where the networks are willing to pay up. And so you've got these traditional basketball powerhouses that are now all improving their football product. And I think a lot of that is driven by a priority in the athletic departments of saying, look, like, the money right now the networks are willing to spend is on football. And so it's great that we are historically blue bloods like Duke and North Carolina, Kansas, Kentucky, all of that. Like, that's great. But man, we've got to get our football programs going, because that's how we're going to make the money. And so, yeah, if Brett Yormark is wanting to build this major basketball brand for the Big 12, I totally get it. But again, the money is being driven by football. And so it's great that now, like, we're seeing these quote unquote basketball schools now really, making a major priority in making their football programs viable.
So I think that market is incorrect, by the way. I think that the networks have been pulling the wool over the eyes of people. And here's why. We know that the NCAA tournament is worth like $3 billion. Yet we're being told consistently that basketball doesn't matter in these TV deals. That doesn't equate to me. Never has. I think that they clearly have more value than that. or you wouldn't have one of the biggest networks willing to spend what it spends to just carry the end of season tournament. If the end of season tournament, and it's unique, and I understand that, but if that's worth that, you can't tell me that the regular season isn't worth more than what it's been valued at. And I think that's where Brett Yormark is attacking heavily, because that's the only way that you can try to level the playing field in football with the others, is to provide those revenues through basketball to help supplant the difference there. And I understand the difference, and the difference is there, right? Like, I get it. What's going to be rolled out in the SEC and the Big Ten versus the Big 12 football wise, those are stronger brands. They have better teams, more of them. I get it. I totally understand it. But you can even the playing field if you bring better basketball, to the table in both men's and women's, by the way. I think there's something they're attacking. I'm glad that they didn't back off of this. I loved seeing this report today, because I had wondered in recent weeks, like, why did they just stop with Gonzaga? And I know they had to refocus on the other stuff that was happening, but why does that need to happen singularly away from Gonzaga? I don't think it does. I think that you still add Gonzaga, and I still think you should go add UConn, by the way. And then when the ACC comes up, you look there and you see if you can get a stronger Eastern presence, if anybody would jump over. Like, does Louisville have any interest? Another basketball-heavy school does. Obviously Duke jumps out because they're not going to get an invite, I don't think, to the Big Ten or the SEC. North Carolina won't be in play because they'll be in one of those other two places. There's plenty out there, and I hope this is the renewed. And if it takes a bad football year to renew that urgency, then maybe the bad football year isn't the worst thing in the world. Timing is fortunate, but Brett Yormark's staying aggressive, and that's something we certainly like to see as the Big 12 rolls forward in an uncertain landscape. And, again, we'll look at what that means for the other leagues, like, the AAC, and when does it end and what are they happy with? I don't know, but it is interesting news to see today. All right, let's take a quick break here, Max. We'll come back. We'll spend some time on both Monday Night Football and elsewhere in the NFL. We haven't talked about any of the games besides the Chiefs, so we'll take a bird's eye look at the week of the NFL, look ahead to tonight's game as we roll forward on Sports Daily, a Monday edition. We'll be right back.
to the sports talk.
All right, let's do this thing. Go!
Sports Daily is on KFH.
All right. Welcome back in, everybody. Sports Daily. Looking elsewhere around the NFL. We spent some time with the Chiefs there off the top. You can always go back and listen on the Odyssey app for free, kfhradio.com. Real quick, Lee comments to us. It's October. I've noticed a couple of scary issues with the Chiefs. They're letting teams hang around, all but the Chicago game were close finishes. The Chiefs have also had trouble winning without Kelsey, which makes Sunday's injury loom large. The one thing I'd say to that, Lee, is the Chiefs never cover. They always let teams hang around and win them late. Yeah. I mean, the Chiefs don't make a habit of just going in and blowing people out. Never, they really haven't that's just not what they do. So it's not all that different. I think there are clear issues that the Chiefs need to work through. And we talked a lot about that in our first segment, most notably pass catchers. So you can go back and listen to that. Let's look elsewhere. Tommy, across the NFL. It started, with a big win, statement kind of a game from the Jaguars. That's a tough spot for the Bills. The Jaguars got to stay there. That's a totally different kind of home field advantage for Jacksonville to not have to make the trip. So I'm not going to take too much from that. I think it was a nice thing for Jacksonville to do. That was probably the biggest statement. Surprises. I'm not sure there were a ton of other surprises. I will say the Lions did not have Amon-Ra St. Brown. They did not have Jahmyr Gibbs. They really didn't have anybody in the pass game coming in. They had Jameson Williams in his first game in forever, and they just absolutely dominated and stomped the Panthers. We got to start giving them some credit.
The Panthers.
Well, I know.
Let's be honest about that.
They're not. But look at how much Detroit was missing offensively in that game. Right. And they were able to still come in and do that. And that's where it's like, holy smokes. I thought the Falcons made a huge statement, quite frankly, by coming back to win that game. The Patriots stink. But the Patriots, Tommy, might be in the mix for the number one overall pick.
They're really bad. And I wonder, are we towards the end of the Bill Belichick time in New England? And I don't know exactly
I think we are because he's really old.
Right.
Yeah, they just don't have, forever. The chicken and egg conversation of was it Brady or was it Belichick has always been really interesting to me. It was both, right? It would be like saying, Mahomes or Reed. It's both. Who has more to do with it? The players on the field, almost always. So, of course, Brady. I mean, that's a silly thing. But what Brady did for Belichick was let him not bring in a ton of talent all the time and focus his energy on defense and some other places. Well, Mac Jones doesn't provide that for you. So when Kendrick Bourne is your top pass catcher, right, your top target, that's going to be a problem for your team, right? They're very one-dimensional. Everyone knows, don't let Ramondre Stevenson beat you and you'll beat the Patriots. Their defense just lost its two best players. What it makes me wonder is how much in play could the Patriots get as potentially the worst team in football and get that number one overall pick for Caleb Williams?
And that could be an area where Bill Belichick maybe would want to hang on a couple of years longer for a chance to coach.
Is that
Caleb
the best
Williams?
spot for Caleb Williams? Think about that for a second. Not because obviously, they developed Brady and everything was fine there. But man, they haven't invested in, I guess they got Bill O'Brien back. I don't know. If I'm Caleb Williams and I'm looking at all that, I'm like a potential landing spots. I just wonder, they never, outside of Randy Moss that one time, and I guess they had Gronk and they invest in tight ends. So maybe I'm being a little bit unfair, but that, it looks like the Patriots may go down that road. Cincinnati had a nice bounce back win. The Dolphins are, right back where they should be. Boy, really unfortunate for Indianapolis. I see that Richardson's going to be out a little while, but again, they did a nice job of bringing Gardner Minshew in there because he certainly still gives them a chance to win, especially now with what looks like will be a two-headed backfield. With Jonathan Taylor coming back, Zach Moss has been incredible. Where did that come from, Zach Moss?
On the day they welcomed Jonathan Taylor back, Zach Moss goes off for 170 yards rushing or whatever. I mean,
Here's the thing though: Tennessee has been the best run defense in football, and it's not close.
Right,
and that's what they did against Tennessee.
My concern with the Colts is really about, Anthony Richardson. We know how talented he is, but man, he puts his body out there, and the kind of runner that he is as a running quarterback.
That's always the concern.
He's already had a concussion this year and already missed a game. Now he's got a shoulder injury. I wonder, like, that's just the style of quarterback he is. And, how durable can he really be with that kind of style of quarterback he plays?
It really makes you, if you're a team, you see Brock Purdy do what he did last night. And it's like, boy, pocket passer. Yeah, they're not as explosive, but it's still the way to go just because availability. And Brock Purdy got hurt last year, so that's not totally fair. But like they taking hits. I mean, quarterbacks get hit harder than anybody most of the time because they're totally unprotected and a lot of times unaware. So you already have to deal with that. And then to invite the contact, I mean, it's risky. There's no question it's risky. But, I agree. But we'll see. I think the Colts will be able to do some things even without him. The Eagles find a way again. The Rams hung tight, but not enough in the end. We talked a lot about the Chiefs. How about the Jets? Hey, guess what happens? Nathaniel Hackett, you got your revenge game. Do you know why you got revenge, Nathaniel Hackett? Because you actually gave the ball to your best player. That'd be where I'd start if I was Nathaniel Hackett. Breece Hall. Oh, wait a minute. That's right. He is the king of big plays in football. My offense is limited. Big plays might be handy to, have in the mix a little bit. Breece Hall was incredible. And it was more than just the 72-yard run. He'd have had 100 yards without the 72-yard run. Give that man the ball 20 times a game, Nathaniel Hackett.
It's been inexplicable up to the game against the Broncos why they weren't giving Breece Hall the ball.
Well, they're saying the injury.
I know, but I mean, come on. Like, you watch him yesterday, you're like, there's nothing wrong with this guy.
Exactly.
And that's been the recipe for the Jets without Aaron Rodgers. You got to lean on the run game. You got to lean on the defense. You got to play from in front. And, they were able to do that against basically a terrible Broncos defense. My favorite part about that game, I don't know if you saw the post-game handshake with Robert Saleh and Sean Payton. Robert Saleh goes up to Sean Payton, and you can read lips pretty easily in this. And Robert Saleh just says to Sean Payton, "Stay humble," and then walks away. Like, as they're shaking hands. I'm like, I love it. Like, that's perfect. With all the talk that Sean Payton has had over the offseason, and you could tell Nathaniel Hackett was fired up. I mean, this is a redemption, I guess, kind of story for Nathaniel Hackett a little bit, because he was buried by Sean Payton
should know better than that.
Oh, I mean, what are you doing? Why do you do that?
But it's been more than just that. I talked to our old pal Bruce Hurdle this weekend on CBS Sports Radio, and it wasn't just like the one-off thing for Sean Payton. Like, he's been saying stuff the whole time. Yeah. So it's, like, listen, we all say, was it Brady or Belichick, right? Was it Breeze or Sean Payton? That doesn't get brought up enough. But it doesn't get brought up enough.
Right.
And the thing is, to Sean Payton's credit, he has fixed Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson looks good. Russell Wilson going into the game, Russell Wilson had the third best quarterback rating in football. I don't know if you've noticed that. Russell Wilson's been really good. So he did fix that. But is he, this coach that can just fire shots like that? Like, the reality that you should have noticed, Sean Payton, is that your defense stinks. It stunk last year and it stinks this year. We all thought it was going to be better, but it's not, clearly. And good for the Jets. Look, if the Jets can run the ball, Zach Wilson, in his limited abilities, is going to be able to throw it enough to guys like Garrett Wilson and make some plays. The Jets become interesting again if they can run the ball. It's not just that they beat a bad Denver team. Remember the Kansas City game. The Jets may have figured something out here, so we'll keep an eye on them, certainly. The other one last night, I mean, we don't need to. I told you this Friday, I hated this matchup for Dallas against San Francisco this weekend. One of my best friends in the world is a huge 49ers fan, egging me on. Let's bet. And I'm like, man, I have to out of principle, but I hate Dallas in this game. Like, they're going to get their butts kicked. They got their butts kicked. Didn't surprise me at all. I understand the billing of it as like these two top teams, but the reality of it is Dallas is not in the same stratosphere as San Francisco. Go back to the beginning of the season. What did I say about Dallas? They'll probably win some games, but unless their defense is like historically good, they're not doing anything this year. They didn't do anything to make the offense better. In fact, they did things to make the offense worse. So, like, what were people expecting here?
Well, look, I mean, I think that it's pretty clear how dominant the 49ers are. That being said, though, I was pretty surprised the number of points that the Cowboys defense gave up to the 49ers, because I do think the Cowboys defense has been really good this season. And that
it still will be.
That's a stinker from the Cowboys defense. And just from what they've done early this season to have that kind of showing in prime time, that's the concerning thing for me.
They gave up too many yards, but remember that Dak turned it over to San Francisco 3 different times, 3 picks. Right. That makes those games a little bit deceptive. I am worried about the Diggs injury in the secondary for them. Dallas is going to be fine. All right, let's take a quick break, Max. We'll come back. We'll tell you what's on tap today. We'll have much more from these games. We didn't get to Monday Night Football. That's okay. I need a big game out of some. I need a big game out of some Packers. Just know that. We'll tell you about it next on Sports Daily.